After vespers came the customary time for quiet talk and relaxation among the brothers. Hugh took his father to Abbot Robert, and then to Brother John, where he lay in his corner uncomfortably strapped to the rough board splint. Both men spoke of Hugh with such high regard, and with so much genuine affection, that the boy reddened with pleasure. But he himself said very little. He seemed almost dejected, strangely enough, at the very moment when he had every cause for joy and anticipation. That night Hugh slept but little. His mind seethed with memories, plans, questions. Before dawn he arose from his resting-place hard by Brother John on the floor of the chapel, and made his way silently between the forms of the sleeping monks out into the open. The trampled greensward, the broken and blackened walls of the ruined conventual buildings looked fantastic rather than ugly in the half-light of sunrise. Hugh looked over the vast grounds, his heart heavy within him. Glaston had given him quiet, security, peace, and loveliness at the very time in his life when he most needed them. He would always be grateful for this year and more among the brothers. Out of the ruins Glaston would be rising up again, more nobly beautiful than before. He would like to see it grow, to have some little part in the rebuilding of it. He moved thoughtfully in the direction of the grange and the apple orchards, and plucked a little green nubbin of an apple from one of the low branches, noting how heavily loaded they were already with the beginnings of fruit. It would be a good apple year. Brother Guthlac would have everybody picking when autumn came, and then storing the apples in big barrels at the grange for the cellarer to call upon whenever he needed a fresh supply. Beyond the orchards lay fields, and then the marshes began. Hugh could see Weariall and Chalice Hill, and the great conical summit of Tor rising beyond them. Chalice Spring lay in a little valley pocket beyond his view. He pictured in his mind the ancient well with the odd shelf in it, where he and Dickon had stood together, wondering, after they had climbed up from the underground passage, how long and uselessly they had sought for the Holy Grail. But it had been fun, and a mighty good thing they had plumbed the mystery of those passages from beginning to end. If they had not, Brother John, Hugh shuddered, and resolutely put all recollection of the fire out of his mind. He wanted to go to Beckery, had an unaccountable longing to visit Blaharis's island again before he left Glastonbury, in all probability forever. It took some time for him to cover the distance, but at last he stood at the sagging door of the little old hut. Everything was just as Master Blaharis had left it, just as Hugh remembered it, when he had lain in the corner of it during that long, feverish illness. Only the black chest was empty now, its cover thrown back, displaying its cavernous interior. He sat down on the rough block of stone that had been the hermit's favorite resting place. Good old Master Blaharis. Hugh's eyes smarted with tears as he tried to swallow down the lump in his throat as he thought of him. Blaharis had seen his heart's desire and died beholding it, and the joy in his face would be what Hugh would remember about him longest, that and his love for the old stories and traditions about the Holy Grail. He must have been a wonderful minstrel in his youth, and now all those noble tales would be lost forever. With the broken book of the Saint Grail burned, and Master Blaharis dead, no one would ever know, no future age would ever hear those stories, the loveliest in all the world, unless someone should write them down, unless someone who knew them now, to whom they were as clear and fresh as if they had happened but yesterday. Hugh rested his head on his hand and gazed out over the marshes back toward Weariall, but his eyes were not looking for St. Joseph's Thorn, or resting on the blue line of sea beyond Tor Hill. A sudden thought had gripped him, a plan that was absorbing all his attention. At length he rose up and walked back to Glaston with a sure and decided step. When breakfast had been eaten, and the monks had gathered on the abbot's terrace, there being no longer any chapter house in which to hold their morning meeting, Hugh sought out the Templar. "Father," said he, touching his sleeve gently, "Father, I have a boon to ask thee, something I desire with all my heart." "It is thine before thou dost ask it, child," said Sir Hugh heartily. "What dost thou desire with all thy heart?" But Hugh found it difficult to go on, and stammered hesitantly, "I have no doubt that thou wilt be wroth and disappointed with me. But, father, I do not want to go with thee now, to the Holy Land, not yet. I have somewhat to accomplish before I leave our Glaston, something to do that none but I can do." "Not go with me, my son?" cried the knight in astonishment. "But what can be better to thee than to become a knight, and fight nobly in a noble cause?" "It is hard for me to tell thee," continued Hugh, "but I somehow feel, nay, I know that knighthood can wait, that it must wait, until I have accomplished that task to which I feel myself bounden." "What task, boy?" "The writing of a book that will last long after any deeds of knighthood that I might do will have been forgotten. The recording of tales that belong to our Glaston and must not be lost, and which none but I now know. Father, I must stay here, and tell those tales again in a form that is durable. It is my gift to Glaston, the one thing I can give and must give toward her rebuilding." Sir Hugh stood silently looking down at the boy. His face wore a puzzled frown, but showed no anger or resentment. "And, father," continued Hugh, taking courage from the man's quiet attention, "the boon I ask is this. Take Dickon with thee as thy squire at arms instead of me. Let him learn knighthood and follow thee. He will be faithful and devoted, a brave and stalwart knight, and when Glaston is built anew more gloriously than before, and when the tales of the Holy Grail are told again, then, father, oh then, if thou and he should come riding back—" Hugh's eyes were shining. His father caught his 2 shoulders in his hands and smiled down at him. "Hush, lad, I know not rightly what thou art talking about. But if thou art minded to be a builder and a giver in this poor broken world, I would not stay thee, nay, I shall be proud of thee. As for Dickon, I like the boy much, and if thou wilt not squire thine old father, faith, then thy friend shall do it for thee. Run quickly and fetch the lad, for we must be upon our way." The abbot must be consulted about releasing Dickon from the vows taken for him by his father, but there was little fear that he would not consent, especially since Sir Hugh was a Templar under an order very similar to the Benedictine, and was going back to serve the Holy Sepulchre, and all pilgrims going there too. While his father sought the abbot, Hugh raced off to find his friend. He came upon him as usual, helping Brother Simon with his poor. "Dickon!" he cried. "Dickon!" He was so excited himself that he could scarcely get the words out. "You are going with my father and Jacques to the Holy Land. You are going to be a squire, and then a knight, just as you have dreamed of all your life. Dickon, hurry and come to my father. He is even now talking to Abbot Robert about you, asking to have you as his squire." Dickon stood perfectly still for a moment, his round blue eyes getting bigger and rounder, his mouth half open. Then he poked Hugh gently with a trembling finger. "Say that again, Hugh, all of it. I don't think I heard you right." When Hugh had repeated the essential part of his message, Dickon let out a whoop that might have been heard from Tor to the Mendip Hills, and then stood on his head. Having thus relieved himself of his first emotion, he fell upon Hugh and began pummeling him and rolling on the ground with him. Then he sat back and hugged his knees, breathless and grinning ecstatically. "Me, going along with you, to be squire at arms and then knight. Knights! Hugh, we'll be brothers in arms as well as sworn brothers. I can't believe it. I just can't believe it's true." Hugh sobered. "Not brothers in arms, Dickon. At least not yet. But brothers always and always, Dickon. I'm not going. Father is taking you instead. I'm staying here at Glaston." All the joy and enthusiasm died out of Dickon's face, so that he looked stricken. "You are not going?" said he slowly. "But Hugh, why? Couldn't we both go? Wouldn't your father take us both? I wouldn't ask to be squire, if I could just follow along, be a servant and mind the horses." Hugh shook his head, smiling affectionately at his friend, but speaking with finality. "No, Dickon, I think now it was fated to be this way, that maybe that was why I was shown the vision of the sacred Hallow. Blaharis is gone. The broken book is gone. No one will ever search again in Glaston or anywhere for a Holy Grail that can be held in one's two hands. But the stories, the tradition, all the meaning and the marvel of the Holy Grail, that mustn't be lost, and it will be if I don't write it down. Nobody knows about it, or could tell it from beginning to end now but me. I've got to stay here and make a book of it, the most beautiful book in the world. I've got to do it, and I want to do it for our Glaston." Things happened so fast after that. Dickon recovered his excitement and enthusiasm to a certain extent, grieved though he was at the thought that he must leave Hugh behind him. He said good-bye to Brother Simon, with a catch in his voice, and ran with Hugh to the Grange to see Brother Guthlac. "It's a queer thing," he said huskily. "I thought I'd be so happy about going away from Glaston, especially to seek adventure in a strange land, and now when I say good-bye to all these good folk, seems as if I could just bawl like a baby because I am going." "You won't feel that way long," encouraged Hugh, "and you'll be riding back some day. You mustn't forget that, with your shield and spurs and all sorts of knightly honours upon you." Dickon's face cleared, and he smiled happily again. "True enough, and everything I do, all the battles and honours that I win, will be for our Glaston." After the Grange, they went into the bell-tower chapel to say good-bye to Brother John. He had already learned that Dickon was going instead of Hugh, and his face wore a comical mixture of relief and delight that his favourite would remain with him, and concern for the boy who was going out from the sheltering walls that had been his home ever since babyhood. The friendly advice that he poured forth upon Dickon's head was interrupted, however, by a summons to hasten to the south gate. Father Robert was standing with Sir Hugh and Jacques near the half-ruined entrance to the monastic grounds. The horses of the two men were pawing the earth near them, and another horse, one that belonged to the abbey, had been saddled and bridled, ready for Dickon to mount. The boy had nothing of his own to take with him, except the clothes on his back, and Hugh had told him his father would doubtless have him fitted out in proper livery for a squire when they had got to a neighbouring city. There was nothing more now except the saying of the final farewells. "My son," said the abbot gravely, laying a hand on Dickon's shoulders, "I am giving thee into the charge of Sir Hugh de Morville, to be his squire-at-arms and to be his man. Be dutiful, obedient, faithful. Serve God as truly and as lovingly out in the world as thou wouldst serve him here in the shelter of our abbey. If, when thou art grown to manhood, thou dost wish to return and take the Benedictine vows thy father purposed for thee, well and good. If thou dost not feel thyself called of God to enter our brotherhood, then I absolve thee of the vow thy parents made for thee. Thou art free to choose, but let it be God's way thou dost choose, not thine own way, wheresoever thou art and whatsoever thou doest. Farewell, my son, and God himself bless thee and go with thee." He made the sign of the cross over the boy, who knelt before him. Then the seriousness of the moment broke. Jacques stepped forward with his master's horse, bidding Dickon hold the other two. Sir Hugh put his arms about his son unashamedly, and kissed him. The two looked at each other for a long, silent moment of mutual understanding. "Good-bye, lad, until thy task is done," said the knight. "Good-bye, my father." And then, "Farewell, Jacques, and Dickon, oh, Dickon, good-bye, good-bye." Hugh called to first one, then the other. They were all mounted at last, and moving toward the gate. Sir Hugh first, then Jacques, then Dickon. The long shadows of late afternoon were falling, and a shaft of sunlight shone through the trees directly on Dickon as he turned for a last wave of farewell. With a sudden chuckling laugh, he seized his round boral cap and made a lunge with it at the streak of sun. Then he caught it again, as it was about to fall, almost tumbling off his horse as he did so. "No use!" cried Hugh, laughing. You just can't hang your hat on a sunbeam. You're no saint yet." "You wait," Dickon shouted back. "Some day." But the last of his sentence was drowned in the clatter of the horses' hoofs as they passed under the stone gate and out onto the high road beyond. Hugh turned back into the cluttered, blackened abbey grounds. Father Robert still stood beside him. The two looked at one another for a moment in quiet friendliness. "Tomorrow," said the abbot, "we shall begin to build. It will be good to see Glaston rise again out of her ashes." When he had got back to Brother John, he found the little monk happily fingering a sheet of fine new parchment. "Hugh, lad," said he, "there be a few clean, newly stretched skins in yon remnant of a kitchen, and some minium, the clearest red, and ink and gold leaf, a little, and the novices have found some rules and pens and other ombre material in the ashes of the cloisters, still unharmed, miraculously unharmed. Thou canst begin at once." "Aye," said Hugh, "tomorrow I can set the title page." "And we shall soon have more materials. We can borrow from Wells Cathedral. We can go right on with the work." "Capitals in gold leaf with a good red ground," continued Hugh dreamily. "How about it, Brother John, and scroll work all down the page, S for sanctum, and G for Gredalus, big and florated, and for a subtitle, written in good clear black in the pointed Gothic lettering, 'The Book of the Holy Grail.'"